Stash Street Community Garden, and we are in Columbia, Missouri, and today we're going to learn some about agroecology and fruit tree pruning and maintenance so that we can all contribute to the community orchards that are in this town with the centuries. Let's go around in a circle and introduce ourselves.
I'm Kelsey, and this is Jessie, and we're here kind of because we moved into a house and we discovered there was a peach tree and a nectarine tree, and they have not been touched in years, so we thought we'd come and try to figure out how to take care of them.
Have some fun. Yeah. And I'm Victoria, and I'm here because my partner and I have a unique, you can do that on the phone as well. My partner and I have a front yard garden. We've tilled up the entire front yard, and I like to say that we're kind of lazy gardeners. I like to figure out ways to get the most out of it doing the least. And one of the things that I realize is that I have a good handle on planting and harvesting, but that maintenance piece of whatever it is, like knowing exactly when to do it and how to do it, I don't really understand the concept of pruning and that sort of thing. So when I saw your workshop, I was like, that's perfect. And I really like the idea of there being fruit trees. Like everywhere there's trees that they plant for landscaping purposes.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense just to make those fruit trees. So last year we had CCUA help us, and they planted apple trees and we put in hazelnuts, and that's the idea, is that it would basically have a sustainable yard.
Nice. Turn it around.
Sure. I'm Victoria's partner. I've always wanted to be a surgeon, but no one would allow me to take out their heart or liver. So trees seem like the next best option.
I'm Saxon Brown. I work at the community Montessori school, and I studied agriculture and education in college, and I've always been into mixing those two. So we have a big open area at the school, and we have several fruit trees, and a pretty, and I can say this because it's by me, poorly managed vegetable garden space. So although I know basic pruning principles, I just wanted to get kind of a reminder and actually have somebody tell me what to do again before I go and try to do things to our trees. So.
Great. All right, I think we can cover all that. All right, so yeah, I'm going to give a little lecture, and then at the end, if you have questions before we start doing the hands-on stuff, just save them for then. So we're talking about some crop species that are, woody-stemmed, tall. They're dominant in forests and woodlands, and sort of co-dominant with grasses in savannas. So in a savanna, the whole crown of the tree, all this aerial portion, has leaves on it. And maybe in an open canopy woodland too, so you've got sort of maximized photosynthetic capacity per tree, and all that energy can go into fruit, and there's also this sort of matrix, the space that all the fruit can go. So we're sort of imitating the woodland or savanna, probably woodland unless we're deliberately cultivating stuff underneath. Which we might be. If we were going to follow the way of nature, there would be animals here in the orchard. And to give a local example, anthropologists say that in the Ozarks, the indigenous people frequently burn the forest periodically, and that would reduce the survival rate of saplings, therefore resulting in fewer trees, but that had more light per tree. And that would pump out more acorns because they could select which trees they wanted to live and die. As well, there would be more light getting down to the ground, and so there was a lot more herbaceous cover and grassy cover. It was more like a pasture, and in some places more like a garden, depending on how much attention people were giving to it. And it's estimated that between 2 and 5 times more large mammal biomass, non-human large mammal biomass, was supported by the proliferation of the acorns, mostly from the oaks, as well as all the forage on the ground. So here we're in a community garden where we don't have any animals per se. We've got some birds and bird houses, but we don't really. We have some cats sometimes, some snakes, but we don't have many other large mammals. And currently, humans aren't returning their own waste from their own fecal matter to the garden for enrichment purposes. So we're really kind of missing a part of the natural system here. The root syllable eco in economics and ecology means home, right? So we're sort of treating the trees here, if we're going to do it in an agroecological fashion, as family or friends, and there's some give and take, some reciprocity there. So the first thing I'll just highlight is that I brought some manure, some nitrogen-rich bedding from a local stable, the equestrian program at Stevens College, which gives away their stuff. And it's just an appropriate sort of give back to the trees. If you're expecting them to yield well for you and give to you, you're going to need to give back. So thank you, Stevens College, for being so open-handed with that. Also, it's a waste product for them. But for us, we can sort of integrate rather than segregate. So since there's no horses here, we sort of have to connect the dots for that ecological process to happen. Anyway, there's a second benefit to using this. So pop quiz. What is the number one source of mortality for urban trees in America?
Frat boys.
I hear salt poisoning, frat boys. Lawnmowers, that's right. Lawnmowers account for 90% of tree mortality in urban areas. And an accidental death by hitting it with a lawnmower. So besides fertilizer, putting rings of mulch, whether it's manure or something like wood mulch or straw, can help make a physical barrier to lawnmowers hitting it, and sort of be a visible sign for people to not hit it, because people don't intend to kill trees, but they do constantly. So I'm hoping that with this workshop that we can start to sort of build up the decentralized cadre of people who know how to take care of fruit trees in this community, and that we can, as a loose federation of people, we take care of the trees in our yard and our community gardens better. And once you have the responsibility to act. So I deputize you all to be good community orchardists wherever you see fit. So now on to the pruning. Why pruning? Well, as I kind of alluded to, we're sort of manipulating the crown of the tree in order to optimize fruit production. It means a few things. We want to create a structure that's easy to harvest from and that produces good fruit. So we're going to look at you've got the main trunk of a tree, and these are mostly apples and pears. And we call this main trunk, if there is one, the central leader. There can be like modified central leader systems with like a few different trunks coming out, but you don't want them to crowd them. Typically on prunus, rather than like pome fruits like apples and pears, typically people do something totally different. They do sort of like an open bowl, where from a central point there's all these sort of cloud of branches coming out. And so, but we're not going to talk about that because we don't have any examples of that right here. Yeah, peach and cherry. And if we have those at the other side, I can show people how to think about that. One of the ideas is that you don't want it to be too dense, because when these branches are rubbing together, they can so there's pockets of air that have moisture in it, and that can breed fungus. So we're sort of opening it up for airflow, as well as ease of putting our hands into the crown of the tree to pick the fruit. So typically what we do is we sort of have scaffolding every 2 or 3 feet on a semi-dwarf tree, maybe a little closer spacing on a dwarf tree.
Are they semi-dwarf?
I think that they are semi-dwarf, yeah, but they might be dwarf. Hard to tell because they're not very old. But yeah, so naturally trees, apple trees and pear trees in the wild where they're from, which is like Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, are actually dominant canopy trees. They grow 60 to 80 feet tall. It's kind of hard to get up in the canopy to harvest from there. So over the last few thousand years, people have found mutants that aren't able to support such vigorous growth. And so what people have done is clone those mutants, and then they take the root system and sort of surgically splice your favored fruit-producing variety on top of a root system that can't support extensive vertical growth, just for ease of harvest. So that's what dwarf is. It's like 8 to 10 feet tall, maybe. And then semi-dwarf is more like 15 to 20 feet tall, and then a full tree, which like most commercial orchardists won't touch with a 10-foot pole, right, is 30, 60 feet tall eventually. So we're going for this sort of scaffolding. So we'd have like in the space of like 10 inches here, like a bunch of branches going out in different directions, mostly horizontally, maybe a little up. We certainly don't want them going down like this, because it's not a very strong shape. We don't want the branches crowding each other in this horizontal plane. And then we give some spacing, 2 or 3 feet up to the next row of scaffolding branches. And for maintenance pruning, if people are on it every year, there's really not that much pruning to do. You just come and take off branches like this, which we call water shoots, which have just like shot up straight up and are like interfering with the next level. And then we guide branches that might be interfering with other ones to not do that. And but on some neglected trees, it's usually like maybe a 3-year project to get them back to where they're looking and producing optimally. So what we're going to do is get some hands-on experience with that. Do we have your permission to get you on camera for the purposes of teaching?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Zoom in. Please introduce yourself and say what you'd like to get out of this.
I'm Lucas. I'm really just here to help out.
Yeah.
Just extra hands.
I'm Marjorie. I'm here to get an idea of what I would need to do to prune fruit trees in my own yard when I do actually get a chance to plant them. I haven't had a chance to plant anything yet, but I've got some trees that I got from the Arbor Day Foundation that I need to get planted at some point this spring when the weather gets better.
Before they die?
So, yeah. Yeah, before they all die, because I had 12 of them, and now I think I've only got 6 left that are dormant, but not dead, I think.
I'll just say that you could plant them right now and it would be fine.
Okay.
So there's the good news. Brother, can I have that football for a minute? So people, depending on who you talk to, the old timers would say you should be able to throw a pig through the scaffolding.
I always heard cat. Pig is much bigger.
Yeah, pig is much bigger. On a standard tree that's just like huge, like a pig might be more reasonable. And so, but now we have a pig skin. So, the question is, are we going to succeed in throwing this through? No. So we're gonna get our clippers. Who brought clippers? I guess an important final note before we begin. to sterilize our clippers for two reasons. One is we're making incisions into this this plant critter, and we don't want them to get infected with whatever's in the air.
Do you do it between trees?
Yeah, partially because there's pathogens that certain trees have, like fire blight and red cedar rust and others, and all these domesticated trees have pathogens because they sort of had their wildness bred out of them. And the process of domestication, breeds more intense pathogens sometimes. And then sometimes you've got a tree that looks healthy, and part of it is it's a hybrid that's bred to be very strong against a particular pathogen, but it might be carrying that pathogen. And so then if you go and cut on an old-timey tree with the same pair of clippers, you might spread the pathogen from to a more immunocompromised species. So bleach works fine. So I just brought a little wet sponge. I'm going to put a little bleach on there. Doesn't count as organic if there's bleach, but we don't have organic certification, so that's not something I'm too worried about. Just pass this around, and don't bleach your clothes, and sanitize your blade. I think like some kind of hydrogen peroxide. I couldn't find any at the store of the kind that was advised, so I just.
In Kentucky, we use bleach in our family. I don't know if it's different. Maybe.
It's different state by state.
Okay.
So like Pennsylvania doesn't allow it, for instance.
No, I'm not looking the non-chlorine bleach would work. The hydrogen peroxide bleach, like.
Yeah. For killing like unicellular organisms.
See, in normal bleach, like bleach you would have in the bathroom, wouldn't work to kill everything. You would have to get some actual, not bleach, hydrogen peroxide.
Right.
Like you would have in the bathroom wouldn't work. You'd have to get some stronger. So if you have like 9%, don't even know the number. If you have like 9% hydrogen peroxide in your bathroom, you would need 10 to 12 to be able to get everything off of your clippers. But if you go higher than 20 or 30, you're gonna dissolve your clippers. I'm not even joking.
So don't dip your clippers in.
I'm guessing that what's in
That's
the.
exactly what I just said.
Yeah. I'm guessing that what's for the
Not as succinctly.
what you use it for the laundry is stronger than what you use on a
Exactly.
wound. Yeah.
What you would use for the laundry is much stronger. If you've ever, you probably haven't done this, but hydrogen peroxide, just like no,
Are you a chemist?
no, scientist, amateur scientist. Kind of, but if you've ever had drywall and you get hydrogen peroxide on it, it turns blue. Just you can get a sheet of drywall and put a little bit of.
Actually, I think what that was is he had peroxide on something, and
Tried to clean something
There
up with
was-
peroxide.
off the wall there was blue paint under
Yeah, it gets rid of
the other layer,
Huh.
and the peroxide cut
completely
through
dissolve.
one set of paint and showed the other set of paint.
People use standard hydrogen peroxide to get off paint off of tools.
Another marvelous use for peroxide. Does anybody have any questions after that? Before we start?
Can you just talk about the way they've got this tree broken up there? Is
Yeah.
that okay? I mean,
Okay, yeah, why don't we zoom in on how this is done. So this tree has a few stakes around it, and sometimes a tree, when you're first planting it, will get some like mold damage or vole damage on the roots, and so like it's not very wind firm, and so they stake it up to keep it from falling over. They've got like rope with little segments means of hose to prevent the rope from digging into the tree. All of those have since shifted around and are not doing their job. So we can sort of change that up while we're thinking about it. None of these are caged, because I guess there's not that much deer pressure here. I've certainly noticed that there's less deer pressure in these gardens than what I was used to back in Ohio. So I'm going to start working on this one and describing what I'm doing, and then maybe we'll end the video there, and we'll start taking turns pruning tree by tree, and I'll watch you, and you can tell me what you want to cut off, and I'll tell you if I think it's a good idea, and then we'll do it. So this is here, let's see, I think this is actually 2 years worth of growth, so it would have been a water shoot last year, but now it's more than that. A straight water shoot would be something like this, where it's just going straight up. And this is actually not what you want. You want things sort of, your fruiting limbs coming off of the main scaffolds, which are like more or less horizontal, to be like going up at a 45-degree angle, more like this. And so cutting this off will prevent the thing from growing inwards. Also, this is a great scion wood if you like your apple and want to top graft it onto like a crab apple, or if you've got like a blight resistant pear that you really like to eat, you can cut off the water shoots and top graft it onto the invasive Bradford pear, which is growing everywhere, and suddenly you don't have to have bought anything, and suddenly you've got an orchard where there was just like an invasive cluster before.
That's an excellent idea.
Yeah, and you can do that with a lot of, we could teach a whole advanced workshop on that, and we could do a pruning or a grafting workshop if people want to do it. But let's focus on the task at hand. So I am looking at this, and I'm seeing that there is this is sort of the area of the scaffolding, and this is the lowest one, and it's only got this like one very problematic upward growing thing. So I'm wondering if we just want to let it go, likewise, the top one on this graft is just going straight up, which is not what we want. We want it growing out. And there's another one sort of in the same vein growing more out. So I think we're probably going to take that out. An important thing is you can't cut too much. You can easily cut too much off of tree in a single year. So like the general rule is don't cut more than 30% of the above ground biomass off in a single season. And we're doing this during the dormant season before it's invested the energy that's currently stored as carbohydrates in its roots in all these leaves. So we're sort of minimizing the loss to the tree. They're doing it now. But at the same time as saying that, there's kind of not anything growing straight out in this direction. And so what you can do is you can look for a bud that's pointing in the direction, and I see one that's like sort of growing towards me, and there's not a whole lot else growing towards me. So if we have this be the top bud, if we like cut this right here, then this bud on this side is going to grow out this direction. If I cut it here, the top bud is going to be there, and it's going to grow out in that direction. And this is kind of on the level that I want it to be, and this isn't dipping down. So this is pretty strong. It would be better if it was angled up a little bit more, but this is pretty strong. So I've sterilized my clippers. I'm going to go ahead, and they're pretty sharp, so I'm not going to make this mangled wound, which is easy to do if you don't have sharp clippers. And
it's just a straight cut, no angle to it.
I try and minimize the surface area that's exposed, but at the same time, having it such a flat cut might like pool water up here, so you might want to get like a slight angle on it just so it sheds water better. It's not what I want on my pruning video. Jesus Christ.
You can edit
But
that
that's
frame.
good. That shows people that you gotta be careful.
So I was talking about taking this off, and you know, I have to wonder, like, if I take this off, this is like a big portion of my 30%, taking all this off. But since it's like growing back in towards the center of the tree significantly here, this is really not what I want at all. So I could, you know, if I was like, I don't know if I've made up my mind yet, I can at least take this off. And then later during this pruning session, I can go down and take more off if I want to.
You cut it. You're cutting, like you're leaving the little ring of the branch that you cut. Like
right. So this sort of scab is going to form out of the collar, which you can see there's like this specialized tissue.
right.
This sort of little folds. Yeah, you don't want to cut into the collar for sure. And again, this is growing straight in, so even if I decided to leave this has got to go. So I'm cutting that out. Another thing that you want to take out is any branches that are bending down, because those are going to break. If they might be great for fruit, like growing fruit, but if it breaks, the branch could tear and create a wound in the central leader. And so we're going to take that out. And we're going to take that out, both for the same reason, that they're pointing downwards. Oh, you're getting the hang of it, so. Jesse's pointing to this.
There's another one of the same branches.
Right there.
And then on the other side,
And
like
that
right
smaller
where it
one
was.
right next to it is kind of growing right up through the middle too.
Let's see.
Keep coming around.
on this side, it's got a V on it.
Okay. And see, this is sort of growing up in the same way, and so we're going to take that out.
Just in the way.
So this one at the very bottom that's growing down, do you want that one out as well? Or
Well, so we've left this one, and this is sort of could potentially, even within this year, fill all this space right here. So we don't necessarily need this, and it is bending down, so we don't want to have this like be a long-term scaffold branch, because it's not that stable. So I think we will take that out. Okay. And so here was a water chute that just wasn't taken care of in the last few years, and it's growing up. It's growing straight up as opposed to out, so it's kind of interfering with the structure that we're going for. So I'm going to leave a bud to grow out this way.
So you clip just above where that bud is.
That's right, because the top bud is going to get the most energy.
Yeah.
Because the hormone system, the endocrine system of a tree is complex just like ours, and I think it's auxin, A-U-X-I-N, that regulates apical meristematic growth, you know, sort of at the tip. And so the bud that's highest is going to get the most most attention from the tree and have the most energy directed towards it for growth. So we're starting to get, you know, creep up towards our 30% mark. So let's take a step back. We can see that we've got like one row of scaffolding down here, and like potentially another one starting to form up here. And you know, I want to see like 2 to 3 feet of just naked central leader between the rows of scaffolding. So we've got this, and then we've got like a foot between here and there. So we might decide to, you know, take this out, or we might decide to take the top one from the lower one out. We might decide to do both. I'm inclined, for starters, to take this one because I feel like we have all the directions on this lower scaffolding already accounted for. Sorry for the wind. That would give us more space. And this is growing out at the same angle as this. So I'm thinking that we'll probably take this one as well.
Take that one on that side. Well, no, actually, that one's closer in. That shoot that's coming up.
I can't tell what you're talking to. This one?
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
I was thinking, at first I was thinking that it'd be more even to take that one, to take the other bigger one. But it's probably better to take the smaller one because of where it is, because it's closer on the inside of the tree. With
Yeah.
that shoot coming up like that, it's going to cause conflict later.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we will opt for taking that one.
And is it concerning that the main leader is now got a curve in it?
It's very concerning. So we need to figure out which of these is going to be the new central leader. And this is not like, this is nice, but this like kind of gnarly, turnaround is not structurally like as strong as it could be. So we have to ask, is this what we're going to work with? It seems like an obvious choice.
Well, so much of another one.
Right. We could use this one, but that's got the same problem. We could potentially use this guy, but for that to get the energy from the tree,
You'd have to cut off everything above it.
right. So I think that we're probably going to stick with this one. And I'm aware that we're getting close to cutting off too much wood here. So rather than cut like all of this overgrown water sprout off, or all of this that's like interfering with the next level, what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick a bud that is pointed in the way that we want it, and then cut it off above there.
Is there a way to make sure that those buds grow out instead of up? Because it does kind of seem like naturally, I don't know, it seems like a lot of things just kind of go
Up instead of out.
naturally.
Yeah, well, typically if you've got it at a slant, if you've got it at like more of a 45-degree angle, the things aren't going to go straight up. But if something gets too horizontal, like this, then something's going to go straight up.
So if it's actually coming from a horizontal base, then it's more like straight up than if it's coming from.
That's been my experience, yeah.
Like this. Like
Right.
these guys there.
So I think to finish this off, I'm gonna, there's some competition between these three. Might choose to look for a bud on this one that points this way and favor that. I think I see one right. There. And this is bending down, so I'm going to take that. And this bud is pointing this way, so I think I'm going to take that. And now really all that remains for us to deal with this year, this has been a heavy pruning, but these trees haven't really been pruned in a while, so it's kind of what you expect. This bud is coming out towards me, so I'm going to cut right above it. And cut this off. And I can hear one of my pruning teachers screaming at me that I'm taking too much off, but I think it'll be fine. So I'm going to cut right there. there, because there's a bud coming towards me here.
So the idea would have been that this should have been having small amount of pruning. Like last year, you would have already done some of these things that would have caused it to be more open,
Right.
rather than going 2 or 3 years and not doing anything with it.
Exactly.
So that's which is why we're having to do it a little more aggressively
Yeah.
this year.
All right, for the football test.
Don't ask me to catch it.
Hike.
Well, up.
There we go.
Yay.
Got through. Okay, so now we're going to do some more hands-on stuff, and thank you for joining us. See you next time.